Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing and availability details. So launched in 2023 here, we have the widely requested and now finally delivered return of the classic Gerald Genta-style IWC Ingenieur. Although the model line traces its origins to 1955, the most recognizable iteration was the 1832 Ingenieur SL or Jumbo Ingenieur, launched in 1976 and part of the purple patch of design from Gerald Genta during his fruitful 70s. That was a great era for him. It yielded watches like the Rolex 5100, the Royal Oak from Audemars Piguet, of course the Patek Philippe Nautilus, and the IWC Ingenieur. And this watch right here follows up a period when IWC had invested quite a bit of money in models that were throwbacks to the 1950s and 60s style of the Ingenieur. So the return of the fully integrated bracelet, lug, and case design, here resplendent 40 millimeters in stainless steel. Its thickness is quite compact at 10.9 millimeters thick. And then if we measure the first end link to its opposite number, this is the rigid distance across the wrist, I measure it at 49.7 millimeters, so it's not petite. I would describe this as less of a analog to something like a Patek 5811 or a AP 16202. Those are very true to the original 1976 and 1972 watches respectively, whereas this is more like IWC's equivalent of a Royal Oak 15510, where it's very much in the spirit of the original and part of that line and lineage, but it is also a modern interpretation. We'll talk about some of those differences as we get a bit deeper into the review. So you have the bare measurements for the steel watch. Now we throw it on a wrist of 16 centimeters circumference, and it fits beautifully. It's really quite nice. It's one of the best fitting integrated bracelet sports watches. This is a genre where the watches tend to wear a size or two larger than their rated diameter. This is pretty much spot on. This fits like a 40. So I could recommend it to a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, and it is pretty flat with a stepped and sloped bezel, so it will slide underneath the cuff. One of the elements where it does put some daylight between itself and the 1832 is that the bracelet design is a nod to history, but this isn't a reproduction of the original. As you can see, we have a combination of polished and satin links. They step down from the case band where the lugs converge from the mid case and follow the taper of the bracelet to the clasp. As with most IWC clasps and bracelets, this is a product of Bracelet, which is down in the south of Switzerland where they speak Italian. This is a well-known modular bracelet system that's been on IWC sports watches since the GSTs. So every one of these links that features a little knob in the center, these links are removable, and you can see the bars that retain them in profile. So you have quite a bit of adjustability, and if you look carefully, you can see that there are actually intermediate sized links built in. So if you find yourself between sizes, you have some adjustability. Here, you know this is Bracelet because it says right there, BRO, easy to spot. The clasp is admittedly a generic piece that you'll find on many different models from many different brands, but its popularity is not unfounded. It's a solid and secure closure with double fold. You can see it's a sequential fold, and then twin trigger release, which means it cannot pop open inadvertently. Details have been sweated. You can see there's a little bit of engine turning on the socket that absorbs the oncoming logo. And then internally, there's both satination and polish, and it's a very secure clasp. Taking a quick look at the case itself, it's not as intricate as a 5811 or a 16202, but it's nicely rendered. You can see that we have satination that is top to bottom on the lug hoods and the case top, and then we have longitudinal satin. You can even see how the lugs, the tonneau style case, have been brought to a little bit of a point where the bevel converges with the case back sweep, and then you have this bevel that runs from end to end. And there are even smaller bevels that have been artfully rendered on the crown guard structures. The original 1832 reference did not have a crown guard, so this is a modern evolution. Remember I said this is a contemporary take on the 1976 Ingenieur. It is not a reproduction or a tribute watch. The crown, which features the IWC logo and motto Probus Confusia, good solid watch, is made in Schaffhausen. It is a screw down. The watch is 100 meters water resistant, true to its origins as a watch for engineers and technicians. It does have a soft iron inner cage, paramagnetic material to channel field lines around the escapement and the hairspring. So some people wonder, why don't they use materials that repel magnetism? The idea is that you want to grab the field lines and force them through an alternative routing around the sensitive parts of the movement. So that's how that works. And this is an IWC, though not a pilot's watch, so for good measure, they have secured the crystal and the seals against accidental displacement or ejection if you are in an aircraft cabin that explosively decompresses. On the dial, we have some elements a bit different from the past. A big one is IWC, the logo, sits up at 12 o'clock rather than being an applique that replaces the index at the top. The indices, the hands, the date, even the texture on the dial, quite a few revisions compared to the historic model from 1976, though all of these elements have their roots in the original watch. You could see this is what's known as the Aqua Dial, and while I would describe it somewhere between turquoise and teal, aqua is certainly one way of relating the color. It doesn't show well in my light box, but it's a lot brighter and lighter when you see it in person. Here it looks like it's almost kind of dark, like it might have navy undertones. It's really quite a bit lighter and more electric blue when you see it. One element I approve is that they have taken the date disc, and on all of the current Ingenieur Automatic 40 models, the date disc is the color of the dials. That's a big win. We have applied dart-style indices, and then we also have a polished frame around the date. There is a quick set for the date and a stop seconds function for the hands, so you can synchronize to a reference time. The texture is very similar to the one that Genta designed, but it's larger than it was on the original watch. Taking a quick look in the dark, it's an easy watch to read. There's no shortage of luminescence. Again, 100 meters water resistant, it says so on the reverse side. Inside we have a movement designed by Richemont's Valfleurier, which is a sort of bullpen for movement design to help supplement the movement design capabilities of the Richemont group brands. And so this is a movement you'll also find on, for example, Baume & Mercier. The 5-day automatic you see over there, that's exactly what this is. And it's a good one. It goes by IWC Caliber reference 32111, and it does have that 5-day power reserve, as well as a 5-position adjustment, which is kind of a high horology standard and not something you necessarily expect from a movement like this. It's got a 4 hertz beat rate, pivots on 21 joules, and once again, 5 days, hacking seconds, quick set date, anti-magnetic, and then a high degree of water resistance. The finishing here is intricate and attractive, and there's a lot to appreciate. If you're wondering whether the watch is worth the money, because it does cost $11,700 used, I would say in the hand it does feel like a near $12,000 watch, and it looks like one too. That said, this is pre-owned, and these have 8-year warranties, so pre-owned might be a very attractive option this early in the watch's production life, as just about all of them will have that kind of coverage, making this an even more appealing option. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability details.